Do you remember the last game that you played that made time just disappear? You know, the type of game where you think to yourself, oh, I have like half an hour before I need to go to sleep, but then the next thing you know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning and you have to be up in 3 hours? For me, that game was Shapez. And I wanted to figure out what made it so compelling, so hopefully I can use some of those design lessons in my future designs, and with this video, hopefully you can too. Hi, I'm Mike, and today I thought we could spend some time breaking down what I think makes the game Shapez so compelling for me, in hopes that we can use these design lessons to make our games more compelling in the future. But before I get into that, I should tell you what the game Shapez is all about. Shapez is a factory game where instead of having resources like ores and minerals scattered about the map, you have things like shapes and colors for you to mine and process. There's a centralized hub in the middle that will give you instructions on what shapes you need to progress to the next level. And as you fulfill these requests, you unlock further buildings that will let you do more advanced things to these shapes. Things like splitting them in half, or stacking them together, or even painting them and mixing paint colors. And as you unlock these buildings, the requests from the hub become more complex as well. So there's always a sense of progression and always that next challenge or next puzzle you need to solve. And then at the end of the game, once you've completed all of the levels, the hub will start to randomly generate these shapes, and that's kind of the end game of Shapez, which, to be fair, I haven't actually done yet, but we'll get there eventually. I will say, on the note of making shapes, one of my few criticisms of the game is that it's not always super clear what these shapes are. I do know that there is an information button that you can hit right beside the shape itself that will break down the shape into different layers and list the colors for you, which is very helpful. But there are a couple of shapes where it's not super clear what the base shape pieces actually are. So I would have liked to see some sort of maybe a glossary in game with the vocabulary for what these different shapes are, so you can also include that along with the color and the blueprints for the layers. As well, just as a little bit of a quality of life change that maybe I would like to see, is that instead of having to click the information button, being able to click on the hub should bring up the blueprint as well. So it's much easier to get access to and maybe accidentally stumble upon if you don't know what you're looking for. Let's take a look at why I find it so appealing and why I keep playing it when I should have gone to do something else hours ago. I think part of the reason, probably a big part of the reason, is just the aesthetics of it, the overall look and feel of the game. If you'll notice, all of the buildings have rounded edges. All of the shapes are just kind of very appealing. There's no hard edges almost anywhere. In addition to that, all of the colors that I've chosen as well, they're all distinct and clear without providing too much contrast. So there's not even any kind of visual fatigue that you get from looking at the game. And all of this really contributes to a very relaxed atmosphere, which is a good way to keep me coming back because it's not tense and I don't need to take a break from it. It kind of just is the break. Contributing to that as well is the fact that there's not really any kind of resource scarcity that you really have to be worried about. You can't mine out any of these shape deposits, as it were. So there's not really any kind of worry or stress about running out of particular shape or resource to use from that place. And in addition to that, there's also not any kind of outside pressure for building anything in particular. Like there's no creatures to come attack your base that you have to defend it from. There's no degrading of buildings that you have to repair. The only real resource in that regard is there's a blueprint shape that you can accumulate and then spend to copy and paste buildings, which I think is a good way to limit the amount that you can do that. Although, if you set up your production lines properly, that probably won't even be an issue for you either. So movement around the map is also much faster in Shapez than it is in other games like Factorio or Satisfactory, because in those games you're an actual character who has to move around the map. In Shapez you just have to click and drag to look around and plan out where you want your next factory to be located. There's something to be said for the satisfaction in the other factory games where you are finally able to build a car where you can move around a lot faster. But here, you don't even have that movement frustration to begin with, and you can just focus on making a factory. And I think it's this focus on the factory building part, this distillation of what a factory building game is, that keeps me interested. There's not really any external pressure to build anything to be super efficient or by a particular time. There's not really any decisions that I need to make because the hub just tells me what the next goal is that I need to hit. I suppose if I wanted, I could focus on getting some of the upgrades, but generally there's enough time between setting up the lines to make the shapes to fulfill the hub's goals that you can then set up lines to create shapes for the upgrades. It's a very elegant way of providing just enough complexity that there's always just that one more problem to solve, while not branching out too far into other systems and just keeping it very focused on a factory building game. I think there's some additional challenge to the number of access points there are on the hub for you to deliver the shapes that you've made, so you really have to kind of prioritize or make sure that those shapes entering the hub are as efficient as possible, which I think adds another extra layer of problem solving that you can do. In the end, these decisions really make it a much more puzzle-like game, where you're just trying to figure out how to make the shapes, how to optimize your production lines, how to bring it all to the hub without breaking other production lines. And it's this, hey, there's a problem that I solved, that I think is what's keeping me going in this game. So what can we learn from Shapez about game design that we can apply to our own games? I think for me, the big one is to keep it focused. You don't need a whole lot of extra stuff going on. You don't need a whole lot of extra complexity to make your game compelling. You can do it with a very simple concept, very focused ideas, just adding enough complexity so there's always another problem to solve. I know that there are prototyping Shapez 2 that appears to be in 3D, so I'm very curious to see how that's going to pan out in terms of adding that extra third dimension of complexity to your production lines that you can work on. If you've tried out this game, let me know if I've missed something in my analysis that you think is important as to why it keeps you coming back for more. Or if you don't feel that way, let me know why not down in the comments below. Also, if you have any other factory games that you think I should try, I would love to hear about that as well. If you've made it this far in the video, it would be great if you could hit the like button to help to spread the word about this great little game. If you're interested in my thoughts on other games, I have another video for you up here. And that's it for me for now. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves and enjoy your gaming.